Welcome back. I'm here again with Dr. Sean McFate, and today we're going to focus on China. Sean, Speaker Pelosi just got back from her trip, I believe. China was acting a little bit hyperbolic, I would say.
Yeah.
And Nancy called their bluff. So
yeah, brave Nancy.
Although I think they're still spinning things up over there, because again, the Western media is not doing a very good job of covering what's going on over there.
No, so there has been a lot of bluster from China. So China likes to saber rattle or fan rattle, or whatever you want to call it, a lot. And she's the ultimate FONOPS. So FONOPS in military parlance means freedom of navigation operations. So, for example, China builds an island in the South China Sea and militarizes that island. Basically, think of these islands as like stationary aircraft carriers, and they say this is Chinese territory. You can't come within 12 miles international waters, and we'll fly a B-52 right above it, just to say screw you and your claims.
Yeah.
And then US and then we also do the same thing with Arleigh Burke destroyers and stuff like that. And so basically we call their bluff. They say this is ours, and we call it, and so sending her there, or she going there, is the ultimate FONOPS, because China, as you know, it views Taiwan as a renegade province, and they have a one China policy rule. And they go around the world demanding that countries observe it. And they give them money, like development money, if they do, and they withhold it, and nothing will anger Chinese diplomat more than to suggest that Taiwan is an independent nation. And then for having the Speaker of the House land there and basically salute the Taiwanese flag, and Nancy Pelosi has been a long critic of China, it is a major FU to China, and China is freaked out. And of course, their people live in a police state and are fed propaganda by the Beijing communist authorities. So they think of it as their point of view is we are the aggressors to a peaceful nation of China, and they're angry, and so that's in the news. And everybody I know in the Pentagon, I know a couple of people working the China desks have not slept since that trip began. They've been living in their offices doing goodness knows what.
But by the way, just a point of fact, we're on Zoom, and anything you say or do passes through into servers on the Chinese side.
Okay.
So just be aware.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to China anytime soon. Doesn't mean they can't reach me. They already have my security clearance anyway. They have mine too. They have my one of the biggest military coups in history.
Yeah, it's long since expired, but they have my top
still have your
clearance.
But I mean, for viewers, you can maybe explain to the viewers the significance of this, right? What year was that? 2014 or something?
People can look it up under the OPM, Oscar Papal Mike, OPM hack, Office of Personnel Management, and they got access to thousands.
They took, I think, almost everybody's security clearance, which is
there's some stuff. There's some stuff. Like if you were people. If you were on a black project, typically what happens is at least in the Army, they remove you from the Dasher file and put your data somewhere else. So,
but a good bulk, that it was an intelligence coup for China. And a huge black eye for us. But leaving that aside,
but to be clear, it made permanent enemies of them with China. I'm not your friend, China. Not your friend.
Both within U.S. government institutions and individuals.
Right.
And individuals. Right. Yeah. So I think the world kind of woke up to the American national security world woke up to the belligerence. I mean, I think there were China trackers who had been tracking us, but now the hoi polloi of the national security community, like moi, we're like, oh my God, this is, but okay. So Zoom, everything's filtered through. And
just going back to our, prior discussion on strategy, right? Not a fan, but it's smart. The other thing that they're doing is look at TikTok, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is the ultimate way to penetrate the electronic devices of every household on the planet.
Right.
And if you look at the terms, again, this is like a Rogan thing, but if you look at the terms of service, they not only get full access to your machine, any machine in your household where you don't use TikTok on, they have access to. So if you have a high-powered diplomat in the US and their kids using TikTok and they don't know anything about it, the Chinese are collecting on them, collecting on everybody. And what is shocking about it is their strategic worldview is they're into this whole social credit system. And what this does is it helps them plant the seeds for again, I don't know what their strategy is, but if I'm looking at it from the outside, and I were playing with their hand, I would probably do the same thing. It opens everyone in the United States, people who have no ambition of becoming politicians, who may 25 years from now become president, for all we know. They are going to be potentially compromised if they use things like TikTok or anybody in their household, even again, not knowing. So sorry, I didn't mean to go.
The U.S. is spending trillions of dollars on aircraft carriers and F-35s and stuff, and they're making some investments in the military, but small ones compared to us, and they're investing in information and data gathering and AI. And we live in an information age, and in an information age, you can weaponize information and get a lot better, a lot more powerful results than threats of physical force. And I think that's and this information penetration doesn't respect boundaries or borders or treaties or any of that. And China has a goal. By 1 October 2049, they want to be the regional hegemon of Asia, and by the end of the century they want to be global hegemon. And they have this narrative like we are the oldest, greatest civilization in the world. And they kind of are the oldest living civilization in the world. Doesn't make them the greatest. And they have a chip in their shoulder about the 19th century called the century of humiliation. And they, and they're also using not just military might, but really their power is in information, something called the 3 warfare strategy, which we can discuss if you wish, and economic power. And again, our national security establishment is, we're rookies at economic warfare because we've never had to really do it. During the Cold War, there was no economic warfare because it was the Soviet bloc versus the free trade bloc, and they didn't interact. And before World War II, we were a second-rate power. We were not like France or England so we never really got to hone our daggers at that. So that we need to get savvy about how do we engage in economic warfare without scuttling our own economy in the process, and some other things too. But this is China, when they look at how to wage war or foreign policy or statecraft, whatever we're going to do, they look at using all instruments of national power, like coercive diplomacy, their economic might, their military, and in this information component, where we generally look at just the military. Half of our federal discretionary budget goes into the Department of Defense. The other departments don't really look at, they look at cooperating with China, and that's not wrong, but we need to have a cooperate, compete, and push back thing. So,
yeah, it's concerning too, because they practice this sort of gray zone warfare where they'll take things just to the brink and then back off or stop, not really back off, but just stop before we respond.
That's right. But they keep everything they capture or they make, or they use their fishing fleet. So they have something called the cabbage tactic, which is if there's an island that they want to capture, they have their navy, but then they have like this massive fishing fleet that has, Chinese Navy radios on it. They work for the Chinese Navy, and they blur the line between civilians and combatants because they surround and they intimidate that island using this their fishing fleet. They're like, I call them like not little green men, but little blue men. And they also engage in things like lawfare. These are things to undermine international rule of law. So they do things that brazenly are against international norms and law when they take islands and they threaten people and they say the 9-line's all theirs in the South China Sea. And, countries like, I think like Philippines sued them in the International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice in The Hague says, China, you're wrong. They just ignore it and they reinterpret it in a ridiculous manner, like something even Saturday Night Live could come up with. I mean, just silliness. And so they're using crafty and cunning tools of power, and they're getting away with it. And this is why they're going to continue to do it. And we need to change the way we think about how do we get China out of the South China Sea? How do we put China back in the box? Because China has no friends, by the way. I mean, all those countries around it hate China, and they've hated China for like 1,000+ years. Why can't we do more about that? Why can't we build a wedge strategy to put daylight between Russia and China right now? I mean, there's all sorts of things that we should be doing. I just don't think we're aggressive enough. There are risks to doing it, yes, but there are also risks for the status quo. So we need to have an intelligent conversation about other ways to compel, to cooperate, and to compete.
And what would you recommend that we start to do in order to reverse a lot of these gains?
Well, so I kind of specialize in sneaky war, but I think there's some craftiness, but there's an economic angle to this as well. I mean, their real estate market is in real peril right now. Right. Mm-hmm. They've also, the CCP has created political sort of, I hate this term, buy-in for the regime because they keep on delivering material improvement to the masses and the growing middle class. Well, that's going to plateau soon, I think this decade. And when it does, will their middle class take it or they kind of fight back? Can we accelerate that? Stuff like that. This information stuff that they're doing to us, we can't stop it, but are there things that we could do to them? The answer is yes, but we choose not to. And there are some risks, and there's other things that we can go into some strategy about some of the underhanded things so your viewers can think about whether that's prudent or not. But there's a lot of hurt that we could do. I mean, by sending more aircraft carrier groups in the South China Sea to deter China is not working. There are other things that we could do in addition to that might be helpful.
Do you have anything you can discuss?
Sure. So let's just do a thought experiment. Okay, this is not me advocating for this, but this is like stuff that should be on the table. So we need to adopt a sort of a strategy or a grand strategy even of the way to get China out of the South China Sea, get them out of trying to influence Africa and Latin America, is we need to get them more interested in their regime security than their external expedition ambitions. If you get them more worried about their domestic security, they will pull back voluntarily from all this expeditionaryism. So how do we do that? Well, we've got to do things that threaten the CCP without getting it to the brink of war. So we do the same thing that they're doing to us in the South China Sea. We kind of do a little bit of games of brinkmanship, not all the way to the end, because we don't want accidental nuclear warfare. But so, for example, here's a couple of ideas. China has on its border, all these states who do not like China historically. Let's prop them up. They can be a thorn in the side of China. Let's also, help train and equip them. Let's professionalize their military. And yes, some of them are like they work for bad dictators, but or they work for autocracies. But we work with Saudi Arabia. I mean, this isn't news. Right. So that's one thing you could do. Another thing is can we create a real insurgency in the West? With the Uyghurs and others, to get their mind. And U.S. Army Special Forces is, this is what they're created to do. Not their secondary mission is to jump out of black helicopters, kick down doors, and bag people. That's their secondary. Their primary mission is to go deep infiltration into the enemy territory and create a guerrilla movement against to become insurgents of their own against, the Beijing. Can we create color revolutions, right? So color revolutions like Maidan Square, the Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2005. Hong Kong was sort of that way. Did the US have a hand in that? I can't say. Could we have done more? Maybe. Are there things like their zero COVID policy, locking down all of Shanghai, which really brought out some of the problems? Can we not work with that? Can we separate? We always talk about, especially, going in, every time we went on negotiations, we're like, talk about the Uyghurs, and nobody cares about the Uyghurs, to be honest with you. If you really want to get, China's attention, have the SEC delist some Chinese companies for a few days and see what happens. Right.
Yeah. Well, and just as an aside, the thing about the Uyghurs is, they were shooting at us in Afghanistan too. Right.
I know.
So,
but and then lastly, my favorite, and this is some of your viewers will love or hate this, but let's do regime change, but not George W. Bush style, not like Iraq 2003. So autocracies, as you know, they're not even like, they concentrate all their power at the very top. That's how they can do big things, because they have huge centralized power. It's Orwellian, and it's not even like a big pyramid. It's more like a telephone pole. And at the top of the telephone pole is the autocrat with his lieutenants. And that autocrat, no matter how comfortable he or she looks, is always worried about their life expectancy. Mm-hmm. So can we covertly
feed the paranoia, right?
And then convince him, I think we may have talked about this, convince him to take out some of his lieutenants for us. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can do. We ought not to. And there's good reasons for that. There's also good reasons to consider this, because the status quo may not be working.
Yeah. And again, you just have to be considerate about, if we do X, again, a little bit, old school game theory, a little bit. If we do X, what is their optimal strategy from a Y perspective? So let's take the seeding special forces in Xinjiang province, right? Well, what would the Chinese do? Well, they would probably try to stoke, the differences between the left and the right and partisanship in the United States, and try to provoke.
That right now already, though.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
They could amp it up. But if they amp it up, they risk exposure. So the three warfare strategy is all about, the three warfares it's three things. One is lawfare, as we've discussed. One is like their, like they have their version of RT News called CCTV and their own media. And the third is like we call it political warfare. And can they stir the pot between the red and blue culture war so that we kind of take ourselves down? So they might respond with more aggression on that. That could be the case. But yeah, you're right. We do this, they do that. Although it could be very hard to predict those things, especially for autocracies, because it's so personal.
Yeah, it's nonlinear. And
yeah.
And then whatever they do, they can do quickly. They can do a lot more quickly than we can.
So we always talk about one of the things that they're selling in the world for their soft power is that autocracies can get big things done. Look at COVID, but they can also make big solutions. They can make big mistakes, like the zero COVID ball. Yeah. Or
the Cultural Revolution as an example.
The Cultural Revolution, or the Great Leap Forward. And so and it's our job to sort of remind the world about that, and, again, we'll lock down Shanghai. Like, that's a city bigger than most countries' populations, and do you want to live under that type of authoritarianism? I mean, so we could do a job of it. And also, and we've talked about this before, but they talk about the Great Chinese Firewall. I mean, can we get covertly on the other side of that and plug into their IT architecture and allow them to Google anything they want, using pirate VPNs? I don't know, but
probably, and we probably already have.
But do we have it enough is the question. And I guess because autocracies are built on lies. They're built on manipulating people's perception of reality. And if we can get in the middle of that process, that's a lot more, that's what gets them out of the South China Sea eventually. It may provoke a huge reaction, but let's not forget, the last time the Chinese military won a war was 1949. They got their butts kicked by the Vietnamese of all people in 1980.
In 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks.
It was ridiculous. So let's there's all this saber rattling, but let's not, let's take some of it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying we should ignore it or downplay it, but we shouldn't freak out. I mean, we shouldn't freak out.
All right, my friend. As always, it was a pleasure, and hopefully see you soon.
Anytime, Sean.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.